Hi, my name is Kim Blaufus. I'm a licensed and certified Chinese medical practitioner, and I've been working in Washington for about 8 or 9 years. I want to thank you for coming to my YouTube channel and viewing something that is near and dear to me. We are in the holiday season, and I wanted to wish you all a Merry Christmas. We don't like being too serious right now, so I'm going to focus more on just sharing interesting stories. I estimate that this is going to take about 25 to 30 minutes, and I'm going to try and take a topic that is huge and drill it down to some manageable pieces of information. The flu has always been a focus of specialization in my clinic. And part of that is because something happened in 2013 where it suddenly became untreatable. So let's look at what the flu is. The CDC identifies three types of influenza viruses: A, B, and C. And the two strains that interest us are type A and type B. And when I look at type A, I always think of my ABCs, with A being the first letter in the alphabet. Type A is the more virulent of the two. It and this is mainly because it includes viruses from non-humans, viruses and bacteria from non-humans, such as pigs and swine. And with such a large and varied population, these strains also mutate much quicker. They're more difficult to treat and are more virulent to the human population. On the other hand, type B are flu strains that usually stay within the human population. They're less virulent, and they are usually much slower to mutate. But what is so special about 2013? Because before 2013, colds and flus were the easiest things to treat in clinic. People would come in sick, and by the time they left, they were well. Well, so in 2009, we had the big flu pandemic, and that was the start of it. That was when we first saw the swine flu H1N1 infecting the human population. And then over the next 2 years, this virus began to drift and mutate. And in 2013, we had a significant mutation, and the virus had mutated to the H3N2. Excuse me. I remember that year because we all missed it. Eastern and Western medicine missed it. And by the time we realized our mistake, we were deep in the throes of another flu pandemic, with pneumonia forcing emergency treatment facilities to open up throughout the state. And I can clearly remember that year. Early in the season, November, December, I had a couple people come in with a fever of 99 degrees, saying they felt pretty bad. And the thing that bothered me was that their pulses were wrong. The pulses were too mild, and that left me confused over what I was looking at. A couple things happened during their acupuncture treatment. First, their symptoms came back way too fast. And second, the formulas didn't touch it. And so I was perplexed. I had diagnosed based on their symptoms, and this had been so successful for me in the past. But the herbal formulas didn't touch this. So I knew something was wrong. And so I requested that they go see their Western medical provider, because whatever it was, I also knew that it was serious. And it took a couple visits, but they were both diagnosed with pneumonia. Pneumonia, with only a minor temperature and no significant symptoms. And I think that's the reason why it took a couple tries to get it diagnosed with pneumonia, because it didn't look like pneumonia. So the problem is, I don't like missing things. And with Chinese medicine, I had become overconfident because I found Chinese medicine had allowed me to see things very early on. I could tell the sex of a child as soon as the mother got pregnant. I could tell a person when a stroke was coming on. I could tell who is at risk for cancer and who had cancer. And before 2013, I could tell someone they were sick 4 days before their symptoms showed up and give them a formula for it. Chinese medicine is an interesting medicine of observation governed by theories, and flus and colds are no different. I think my original interest in the medicine was steeped in an interest for the culture. There's a historical fascination about a culture that boasts of mystical emperors, golden dynasties, that buries an army of life-size terracotta warriors, and lives in a forbidden city. I mean, it just sounds so romantic. There are two theories on colds and flus in Chinese medicine, and Chinese medicine calls them invasions. And the two theories are the cold invasion theory and the heat invasion theory. The first theory was solidified during the golden age of Chinese medicine, the Han Dynasty. And it seems every culture has a time of great prosperity and achievement. And for the Chinese, the Han Dynasty from 206 BC to 220 AD was a time of great achievement. And it was during this time that the first theory on flus, colds, and pandemics was formulated and identified as a theory on cold invasions. And it wasn't until much later, over a millennium, another theory was developed. In the 1600s, a second theory was solidified based on heat invasions. Why did things change in the 1600s? I think the most interesting thing that was happening at that time were the plagues. These huge pandemics that spread rapidly through a population, had an animal vector, and quickly killed people. And here's an interesting fact. There are graves in Kyrgyzstan from 1338 with inscriptions mentioning the plague. And they think that is where the outbreaks first started. Approximately 250 years later, 2 centuries of practice allowed the formulation of another theory of illness based on heat invasions. Since then, nothing has changed. The theories worked, and colds and flus were quickly and effectively treated with one or the other theory. And up until 2013, I hadn't seen a cold invasion. It was 2013 that I had my first cold invasion in clinic. And a couple other things happened during that year. First, the theory wasn't working. If I treated according to the theory, my formulas were too weak. Second, everyone coming in the same time frame was coming in with something different. I couldn't just mass treat, which I could prior to 2013 because everyone had the exact same thing. And it's the same thing that Western medicine tries to do is they try to mass treat the the flu with the Z-Pack. So this started my own anecdotal research to figure out what I needed to change in order to become effective once again. So over the next 4 years, I went through a lot of ups and downs, but I was able to start seeing a number of patterns. First, the swine flu mutations were out in the wild and they were virulent because they practiced a guerrilla warfare. They didn't come across a desert in planes and tanks notifying the defender they were on their way and attacking straight on. Nope, they hid in outcrops, buildings, forests, waiting to find a weak link and then attacking. The second thing I noticed was they went in deep quickly. In Chinese medicine, there are 6 levels in the body. The first 3 are superficial levels and easier to treat. The last 3 are deeper levels and much more difficult to treat. The third thing I noticed was the mutated swine flus mounted stage attacks. They would go into the weakest level, go as deep as possible, as quickly as possible, and then they'd do it again. The virus would lead the attack with misinformation. The person always thought it was something other than a cold or flu coming on, and this would give the virus time to break down the barriers and jump in at a very deep level in the body. Being in so deep, most of Western medicine cold and flu care is focused on the first two levels of the six levels in Chinese medicine, making it very difficult to extract the virus if it has gone below the first two levels. That would give the virus weeks to party at these really deep levels in the body. The virus was able to do a lot of damage to the underlying immune system, and that could take months of repair, if not years in some situation. And that's also why it appears that it takes more than one round of antibiotics at times, and at times where the antibiotics are not effective at all. It's not solely because it's a virus. Sometimes they're just not effective. The fourth thing I noticed is the damage they caused, left untreated, allowed subsequent attacks to go in even deeper. The person always felt worse than before they had the flu. And for older adults, this really created long term issues for them because each year their immune system would be weaker and weaker, and they would get subsequent flus that would last longer and longer. For younger adults and teenagers, the concern has been less identified because, let's face it, youth has so much vitality. Their immune system is being impacted, but it's less obvious today. It will become more obvious as they age. And here is the overall thing that has bothered me about the swine flu. It almost acts as if it's a sentient warrior and extremely opportunistic. It is very patient. It doesn't need to win today. It is in it for the long term, and it has a specific goal of death, and it doesn't need to take all the glory. So every time it attacks a single human being, it focuses on taking out one more defense or weakening one more structure. In order to treat this new attacker with Chinese medicine, I had to change how I thought. And I started mixing the theories on cold and heat invasions. I started grabbing aspects from each of the theories and no longer focused on one theory at a time when treating. And when I realized a person's overall constitution had a big impact on where the virus went, I mixed in information from other theories that didn't even deal with colds and flus. This significantly changed how I treated people. My formulas became more aggressive. I could lock down specific time frames when a person had to go to their Western doctor. I could quickly assess who needed to go to the hospital. My treatments for the same cold and flu were different for different people, and I finally became effective again. What I learned is these colds and flus today had to be treated differently than colds and flus of the past. It can no longer be one visit in either Western or Eastern medicine. There needed to be some sort of mechanism which allowed me to follow the illness on a daily basis. In Chinese medicine, the formula may need to be changed daily, and as a medical provider, I needed the ability to act quickly to stay in front of such an opportunistic warrior. And that is where I came up with the idea of Fight the Flu Club. I was able to send off an early warning signal that notified people that the invaders were in the area, how their attack was going to look, and regardless of what the defender thought, have them take the appropriate formulas to circumvent them. And for the clinic, last year was great. Even though it was a tough year for flus and colds, everyone in the Fight the Flu Club missed the flu. And for those patients who were not in the club and did get pneumonia, I found that marrying herbs with antibiotics reduced illness and eliminated the infection after one round of antibiotics versus the 2 rounds of antibiotics that was more common in the general population. Basically, I did really well. This year, even though it is identified as being a potential minor season, the CDC has reported that type A viruses have been predominant since July of this year. And even though they've predicted a mild season, everybody in clinic is doing fine. They might get sick, but we're usually over it within a week. When I come out to talk to people and talk to them about the Fight the Flu Club, what amazes me is everybody is sick out there and they've had it forever. Some people have been sick for 2 to 3 months. So here's a couple other pieces of information. In general, type A H3N2 swine flu has been the predominant strain of flu for the last 10 years. And last year, it was estimated to be 68% of the flus. Now, here in the States, we follow the information from the Australian government when it comes to flu vaccines and expectations because their season ends right when ours starts. So last year, the Australian government reported that the flu vaccine was ineffective, which appears to have caused quite a bit of controversy here in the United States. Our season started off here with all the major drug companies suddenly publishing ads everywhere pressing the public to get the flu vaccine. What they've learned is that the swine flu drifted last year, and a drift is a minor change in structure and not a full mutation. That drift was enough of a change to drop the effectiveness of the vaccine below 10%. And as soon as it hits 10%, they say the vaccine is ineffective. This has led to a lot of controversy over the flu vaccine. Now, this whole issue of vaccine effectiveness is not a new issue. We ended up pulling the nasal vaccine, the nasal flu vaccine, after it was reported ineffective during the 2014 flu season, and that was the year after the mutation in the H1N1 to the H3N2. Since then, the concern has been that the shot is going to become ineffective also. And this is why so many companies are trying to develop a new flu vaccine and why people are so gun shy with the flu right now. Now, last year when Australia reported the poor performance of the vaccine, everyone went into a tailspin. Visions of the 1918 flu pandemic or worse started circulating. And I'm going to do one more aside here. Many of us are familiar with John Day, Oregon, which is by Astoria, Oregon. John Day, Oregon, that town is famous for Doc Hay, a Chinese medical practitioner who practiced at the turn of the century. And one of Doc Hay's legends is that everyone he treated with Chinese herbs during the 1918 flu epidemic lived. So now back to the panic created by the Australian government's report. So people started publishing reports on where they were with the findings of a new method to vaccinate and what they knew about the current method. And at that time, the CDC published a report on what they knew and what they were trying. And the report was great. It was really easy to understand. It was a nice PowerPoint presentation created by scientists to inform their senior staff in terminology their senior staff could understand, which also means you and I could understand it. And one of the things is we all grew up, well, a lot of us grew up in the Star Trek generation and the hope of science. Well, one of the discussions that had circulated when I was in high school was the use of non-human DNA in humans. And we saw the movie The Fly. There was a thought that non-human DNA could be a problem. And even today, we see a boatload of movies touching on this theme, such as I Am Legend, Walking Dead, and on and on. Well, it hasn't been a problem. And the thing is it's not a problem until it is. Well, the flu vaccine is grown in egg protein or chicken DNA and then injected into us. The CDC report stated over and over again that they found the use of non human DNA to be the key driving factor for making the swine flu more virulent in the human population. The egg protein had changed the virus just enough to make our immune system and current methods of treatment ineffective. And now it was in the wild and mutating. And in 2012 and 2013, two new methods of vaccination were approved. And so now we have three. And these three types of current vaccines, the first is what we know. It's the egg and the chicken egg, and this is the most common way that flu vaccines are made. And it's been in use for more than 70 years. So for 70 years, this wasn't a problem. It just took this virus for it to become a problem. The second method they have is the cell-based flu vaccines. They were approved by the FDA in 2012, and at that time they were using chicken eggs. Later, they switched to dog kidney, and in August of 2016, the FDA issued an approval for Seqirus, and that's the sole provider of cell-based flu vaccines. And the last one is really interesting. The last one was approved for the U.S. market in 2013, and it's recombinant HA, and this is made with insect DNA. So obviously they took that CDC report to heart, and I've looked for that report because I thought it would be interesting information to share today. I cannot find it on the CDC website anywhere. So anyways, getting back to the Australian government report causing quite a stir here in the US, the CDC still has not published final numbers on vaccine effectiveness for last year. The numbers they do have out there don't make sense. So we know that the vaccine is effective on type B. And, just a quick look at the numbers from last year kind of shows a little bit of a subtraction and a division problem. So 68% of the reported cases are type A, 32% are type B. And just looking at one segment, the senior segment, type B, we know the vaccine is effective for that. And we can see by the second line down here that type B effectiveness was 34%. And we can see that the overall effectiveness was 20%, and that the type A effectiveness was 21%. So something doesn't add up there. And so I just thought I'd, use my high school algebra. The total effectiveness is 20%, 68% is type A, 32% is type B, that's 34% effective. 32 times 34, 10.9, subtract from both sides. Now we have overall effectiveness of 9.1% equals 68% A. So solve for A, and the effectiveness for A comes out to 13.3%. Which isn't very effective at all. So, it looks like, on the surface that the vaccine really isn't effective for type A. But conversely, back in 2013 when we had the mutation of the H3N2, The one thing that happened back then is the people who came in with the vaccine, they had normal flu symptoms. Everyone else had a horrible flu, including myself. But that's the only year that I saw that. And since then, all I've seen is that the flu has gotten worse and the vaccine doesn't touch it, nor does any of Western medicine touch it. Well, after 5 years of treating type A flu, I came into 2018 feeling pretty confident. I have been able to identify best practices and incorporate them into a program which I call Fight the Flu Club that allows quick and flexible methods to address the flu. I've identified methods to enhance the effectiveness of Western medical treatment in severe cases of pneumonia, reducing recovery time in almost half. And with this new focus, everything has been really reasonable to treat. It hasn't always been easy to treat as some people have more damage to their immune systems. Yet, every time I treat someone with Chinese medicine and treat them effectively, they become stronger because that is the whole point of Chinese medicine, to strengthen and balance you. I want to thank you for your time and coming out to my YouTube channel. If you like this, click on the like button right below this and also subscribe to the channel. I will continue to publish information that I found on not just Chinese medicine, but Chinese medicine and our interaction with Western medicine. So thanks a lot, you guys. I hope you're having a Merry Christmas. This is 2018, and have a great day.